Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey.
And good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Tampa.
Good to be with you.
So nice very excited to have you here, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
We're delighted to have the Attorney General with us here today. He is one, as I mentioned earlier in a different setting, he is one of us. He supports law enforcement. He supports us as prosecutors. He supports you as law enforcement. He supports our mission, and he understands our mission. And we are very, very excited to have him here. As you all know, he is a native of Alabama, where he has worked with law enforcement in and around law enforcement for nearly 40 years. For 14 years, he served as a federal prosecutor, 2 years as an assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of Alabama, before he was then appointed to be 12 years, and confirmed 12 years as United States attorney. He was appointed in 1981 by President Ronald Reagan. He also served, this part makes me proud, I'm a former Army. He also served in the United States Army Reserve from 1973 to 1986. And then he was elected to be the Alabama Attorney General in 1995. In 1996, he entered the United States Senate, where he was a senator representing his constituents for 20 years. While there, he served on the Judiciary Committee, focusing on his energies on maintaining a strong military and upholding the rule of law. In November of 2016, President Trump nominated him to be our nation's top law enforcement officer, and on February 9th, 2017, he was sworn in as our 84th Attorney General of the United States. Since his appointment, he has focused on ridding our communities of violent criminals and of deadly drugs, and on protecting our citizens and our most vulnerable populations. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to welcome to the Middle District of Florida the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions. Sir?
Thank you. Thank you, our Lord. Thank you. It is so good to be with you, and thank you, Maria, for your kind works and your 16 years, I guess, of dedicated service here to the United States Attorney's Office in Middle District of Florida, and a couple of years in Mexico City, and you kind of experienced proven prosecutor that we like and believe are critical to an effective performance of the Department of Justice, that's for sure. And we are indeed focusing on a lot of things. This district has been highly successful in hitting the Colombian smugglers, crack dealers in Tampa and throughout the district, and particularly doctors and pharmacists. We just had a briefing on that. You're absolutely maybe the nation's leader in prosecuting this serious problem that brings addiction, which leads to heroin and fentanyl and death, unfortunately, too often. Pam Bondi, great to see you, and appreciate your leadership in Florida in the battle to crime. We've had a number of opportunities to work together, and I'm so delighted you could be with us today and participate in some of the discussions we had this morning. Thank you for your good contributions for that. And so this is my 35th United States Attorney's Office. We've got 94. We've got 47 confirmed, so we got some more to do as our permanent U.S. attorneys, but we're working to advance that agenda, you can be sure. It is inspiring, actually, to get out of Washington. Thrilling some days. You really want to be out of Washington, I do. And but we're determined to do our job. We know what we put there in the United States Attorney as Attorney General, and the United States Attorneys and the Assistant United States Attorneys and all our federal investigators. We know what our role is, and we want to get at it, and we will get at it. In particular, I want to thank Alex Sapore and Carlton Peebles of the FBI, Jeffrey Walsh of DEA, Bill Berger with the U.S. Marshal Service, Darrell McCrary of ATF, and Billy Joe Powers of the Secret Service, and all the federal law enforcement partners who are with us. And to thank Tampa Police Chief Brian Dugan, Sheriff Wells, and seen both of them recently, St. Petersburg Chief Anthony Holloway, Gainesville Chief Tony Jones, and all of the other representatives of state and local law enforcement that are here. We know state and local law enforcement makes up 85% of the law officers in America, and it is your success that ultimately will impact whether crime goes up or down. On behalf of President Trump, I'm here to say thank you for your service to this country. The President and I are proud to stand with you. Indeed, he's proud and unapologetic, saying he is the law and order president, and that's the way I feel about it, too. He understands that law officers aren't the problem in this country. They're the solution for our country, and I truly believe that. It was largely because of the work of local and state police officers like you that crime declined in America for 20 years. We had a really remarkable decline. It was a historic transformation. One reason is police have gotten better and better. Sheriffs are better and better trained, using better tactics, better procedures. I had the honor to be speaker last night. I was appointed by President Reagan. His birthday was yesterday, and former Attorney General, great man, Ed Meese, invited me to speak to him, and he was Reagan's Attorney General and Chief Counselor, and he talked about from 64, after the 50s, when we didn't have a lot of crime, 64 to 80, crime in America, violent crime, tripled. This was, and I just reminded everybody, because I was appointed United States Attorney in 1981, and I'd seen this happen. I know how strong an issue it was for the American people at the time of that election. A lot of things that happened, the improvement in police and sheriffs and federal officers and expenditures and minimum mandatory sentences and sentencing guidelines and speedy trials and all those things that happened in the next 6 or 7 years, much of it on a bipartisan basis, was what resulted, in my opinion, in the beginning of the decline in crime. We broke this thing, and it's gone down for 20 years, but we are having some problems now. From 2014 to 2016, the trends of downward decline in crime reversed. Violent crime went up nearly 7%. Murders shot up by 20%. 12% in 15 and 8% in 16. We think 17's numbers are going to may show a small but much less increase in homicides in America. And we began to suffer the deadliest drug crisis in our nation's history. More Americans are dying because of drugs than ever before. We've never seen anything like this. 2016 saw 64,000 Americans die of drug overdoses. 1 every 9 minutes. That's nearly the population of Daytona Beach, dead 1 year. And in 2017, it appears the death toll it may be a bit higher. 2018, this year, we want it down. It cannot continue. The addiction crisis is being driven primarily by opioids, as most of you know, prescription painkillers, heroin, and synthetic drugs like fentanyl. In 2015, opioid overdoses alone killed 33,000 Americans. That's the opioid portion of the 64,000. That's 4 times the number just 20 years ago. And Florida knows this too well. Drug-related deaths increased 22% statewide from 2015 to 2016. Fentanyl-related deaths jumped 97%. So the factor, the driving factor you could see in Florida, maybe more than the nation, is fentanyl. And it was great to hear some presentation from previously about some of the ways that you're attacking fentanyl here and the dramatic results that you got in reducing deaths. Sheriff Wells, did I see him? I don't know if he... There he is, right in front of me. But it was a great success that you've had, and I think it can be replicated around the country. So as we know, you got to look beyond the numbers. You're talking about moms and dads and daughters, spouses, friends, neighbors, and few families in this country are untouched by this disaster. Last June, Alton Banks, a 10-year-old boy from Miami, died suddenly after returning home from a visit to the neighborhood swimming pool. An autopsy found heroin and fentanyl in his system. Around 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve, 2016, a man and a woman were found dead outside their car on Interstate 4 near Daytona Beach. Their 3 sons, ages 2, 1, and less than 1 year old, sat in the back seat crying. The couple had overdosed on fentanyl. And who could forget the tragic story of Katie Golden, a 17-year-old from South Tampa? She died last year after accidentally overdosing on heroin just a few weeks before she was to graduate from high school. She overdosed 2 days before Easter, and then 3 days later, on her mother's birthday, she was taken off life support and died. The people in this community know these stories. We're learning them all over America. Alabama has one of the high death rates in the country. But let me tell you this. We are not going to stand by and let more of our friends, families, and members get addicted, destroyed, or die from drug overdose. President Trump was clear in his State of the Union. Fighting the opioid epidemic is a priority of this administration. He declared these deaths to be a national health emergency. You can be sure the Department of Justice has made it a top priority for us. We've already achieved some successes, including work in this office here in Middle District of Florida. Last month, this office announced drug trafficking charges against 34 people as a result of Operation Hot Beach, Sheriff talked about, and the same day you announced the dismantling of an international heroin trafficking organization, the ringleader of which will spend the next 27 years, and this is basically totally without parole, in the federal penitentiary, and other members will serve collectively more than 122 years. And just last week, this office announced that it had collected $700 million in civil forfeitures, maybe the largest recovery in the history of this district. I'm grateful for the hard work of those in this office who prosecuted these cases, including dedicated assistant United States attorneys like Natalie Adams, Carol Albritton, Dan Baeza, Carlton Gammons, Michael Gordon, Shauna Hale, Frank Murray, James Preston, Michael Senecor, and Taylor Stout. Congratulations on your good work. So we've remained focused on reducing violent crime. The President sent us 2 key orders when I became Attorney General the first day. One was to back the men and women in blue. That's specifically what we were told. The other one was just as succinct and simple and impactful to me. It was to reduce crime in America, not to preside over ever increasing crimes, not to allow a new decade of increasing crimes to dominate and take away the progress we've made, but to reduce crime, and that's our goal. There's no doubt about it. In the first 6 months of last year, the increase in murder rate began to slow, and violent crime, the total of violent crime went down in 2017 after 2 significant increases. Publicly available data for the rest of the year suggests that we can achieve further progress, and I think it's a pure product of the work of the people in this room, and we're seeing that all over the country. But we have much more to do, especially in confronting the opioid epidemic, in which you are leaders here in how to do it, and I want to mention a few things that's happened. Just yesterday, all fentanyl-related substances became scheduled on an emergency basis by DEA, so we're proud of Jeff and Walsh and his team and DEA on that. It's a complicated thing for our prosecution. Fentanyl is the #1 killer in America. Scheduling and restricting all forms of this drug will make it easier for you and your agents to prosecute drug traffickers. Earlier this week, DEA announced that it will now ask each individual physician practitioner when they apply for a license or renew their license whether they have received continuing medical education on prescribing or dispensing opioids. DEA also announced improvements to how it will communicate with its more than 1.7 million registrants. DEA can now send targeted information via email about the opioid epidemic, prescriber education, and the answers to frequently asked questions about opioid prescribing. For example, DEA can ensure that doctors have the CDC's latest guidance on opioid prescribing so they don't accidentally overprescribe. Pam and I, she made some comments about that. A lot of factors out there for our physicians. We've got to reverse some of the trends that have been occurring. These changes will help us prevent addiction from happening in the first place. And that's the most important thing. We need to stop addiction. The plain fact is, I believe, and I am operating on the assumption that this country prescribes too many opioids. I mean, people need to take some aspirin sometimes and tough it out a little bit. That's what General Kelly, you know, he's a Marine. He had a surgery on his hand, it's painful surgery. He said, I'm not taking any drugs. It did hurt, though. It did admit it hurt. But, I mean, a lot of people, you can get through these things. And we need to reduce that. Of course, it drives your insurance up, or it drives up Medicare and Medicaid costs too. For those who act in bad faith, we also have a new and more effective tools to find them, and we'll put them behind bars. In August, I announced a new data analytics program, the Opioid Fraud Abuse Detection Unit. I'm hearing great reports on its validity. I created this unit to focus specifically on opioid-related healthcare fraud, using data to identify and prosecute abusers. The data analytics team can tell us important information, like who is prescribing the most drugs, who is dispensing the most drugs, and whose patients are dying the most. We can get that information. We have that information. We're providing it to DEA. We're providing it to United States attorneys. This helps us see oftentimes extraordinary outliers. The legitimate doctors prescribing here, some of them many multiples of prescribing of opioids. So DEA is using this data for investigative packages across the country. And last week I announced that DEA is conducting a 45-day surge in special agents, investigators, and analysts to generate more investigations based on these data packages. This, I think, can be very positive for us. Last week I announced a new resource to target traffickers who illegally sell drugs online. It's called the J-Code, the Joint Criminal Opioid Darknet Enforcement Team. Pretty good name, I guess. J-Code is simpler, I'll acknowledge. The Darknet is a big deal, and we have got to do better about attacking it. We hammered the Alpha Bay group, which was the largest one, and shut it down. They had 220,000 sites on their secret website, this Darknet site, that you could order illegal drugs from, including fentanyl. So we had a case in Utah, some teenager got some fentanyl, he gave it to a 13-year-old, and we lost that child. Overdose deaths. That's the kind of thing that's out there today. By bringing together DEA, our Safe Street Task Forces, our drug trafficking task forces, healthcare fraud special agents, and other assets, with the FBI, we will more than double the investment in the fight against online drug trafficking. That's an FBI priority, dedicating dozens more special agents, intelligence analysts, and professional staff to focus on this one issue. The J-Code team will coordinate across the FBI offices all around the world to target and disrupt the sale of synthetic opioids and other drugs on the dark net. We're going after dark net marketplaces, Alpha Bay, as I mentioned. This is the kind of thing that I believe we can identify sooner and be more effective at shutting them down and keeping them from getting as big as 200,000. That's what the FBI believes, and I think they'll be successful in that. Over the summer, I assigned 12 experienced prosecutors to opioid hotspot districts across America to focus solely on investigating and prosecuting opioid-related healthcare fraud. I have sent these prosecutors to where they are especially needed, and one went right here to this office. Kelly Howard Allen, where's Kelly? Is she in this room? She's great briefing. Has been with the office for more than 15 years. She's been designated now as full-time as an opioid fraud prosecutor, and that has allowed Maria to hire an additional Assistant United States Attorney Greg Pizzo too. So it's her commitment to full-time work as an experienced prosecutor is not reducing your office. We're bringing somebody in to replace that. So we have a saying in my office that an additional United States attorney is the coin of the realm. And I know that Greg is helping you. So we're looking to save money wherever we can and make sure that we can convert that money savings to a prosecutor or an agent that could be more effective in the fight against crime. We are indeed in tight budget times, and we're going to have to produce more, and we will reduce more for less, if that's what it takes. So I want to thank all of you for that. Indeed, I was looking at, do I still have that? I think I do. Maria, in the past year, you've had an increase of 15.8% in drug cases prosecuted, 12% increase in violent crime cases in your office. So that's the kind of productivity we like to see. This afternoon, we'll be traveling to Key West. We'll meet with the leadership of the Joint Interagency Task Force, which coordinates with federal law enforcement and our international partners to target transnational criminal organizations and interdict drug traffickers from the Caribbean and the Pacific. And I'm really anxious and interested in seeing that. Tomorrow, I'll be in Miami for the Opioid Summit hosted by Admiral Tidd of Southern Command. We'll address strategies for interdicting fentanyl and other highly toxic opioids. Your superb new interim United States Attorney here, Maria Chapa Lopez, was formerly the Deputy DOJ Attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, and so we know she can contribute in these areas very well. These meetings today and tomorrow follow up on meetings I have held all around the world as part of our efforts to prevent drug trafficking. We are challenged, I got to tell you. The world supply and the cleverness that they have of getting that supply into the United States is very, very challenging. We know we can make progress on prescription drugs, and we're going to make progress on these imported drugs too, but it is a challenging thing. I met multiple times with my counterparts in Mexico, Colombia, the Northern Triangle countries, and those meetings have helped us create some important initiatives. I met with leaders from China, which is the primary source country for fentanyl in America. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein has been to China and discussed these issues. We're working to improve our efforts to stop that importation. Helping law enforcement do their jobs, helping the police get better, celebrating the noble, honorable, and challenging work of our law enforcement communities will always be a top priority of President Trump and this Department of Justice. You can be sure of that. Together, we can stop the flow of drugs, bring down violent crime, and give every American peace of mind. So I'd like to close by reiterating my deep appreciation and profound thanks to all the men and women of law enforcement, federal, state, and local, and their families who support them and sacrifice so much every day. so that you can every day walk the streets at some personal risk to preserve safety and security for our country. The work that you do, that you have dedicated your lives to, is essential. It has to be done. The Department of Justice believes it. President Trump believes it. You can be certain about this. We have your back. You have our thanks. Thank you all. It's great to be with you. Thank you, Maria.